Okay, so wow, uh, that was logistically crazy, but it's working. It's working this time, and I think I have to replicate this formula on the Mac that I normally use. I get different results every time I try to do this on my Mac. The audio doesn't work, the video doesn't come out right. It's real choppy, and then the very next time everything's perfect. So, and the best time that it worked, where it just worked right out of the box, I was running off battery on my 13-inch MacBook on our corporate Wi-Fi, and it worked flawlessly. And yeah, and for some reason, ever since then, Matt or I, every time we try to do it on our Macs, one of us doesn't have audio, the video doesn't show up, and it's crazy.
Well, we're here now.
Yes.
So you
Um,
wanted to talk community stuff.
yeah. Well, let's do sort of intros. I'm Derek Winkworth. I am the developer advocate for NRE Labs. I work at Juniper Networks, and I am one of the co-hosts of this show. Matt is out at Interop this week, talking to network automation nerds in Las Vegas. I wish I could have been there, but I wasn't invited. That's
You know
par.
what? I mean, on the one hand, network automation nerds. On the other hand, Las Vegas. So,
Yeah, yeah. I've been there so many times now for these events that I don't really care about being in Las Vegas. You can get good beer anywhere, and I don't really do Las Vegas things. I don't gamble and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
David G sometimes comes on here too, but he wasn't able to make it. But we do have another regular co-host that we'd like to introduce, a key member of the NRE Labs team. Her name is Lisa Kaywood. She's also at Juniper Networks. Lisa, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, Derek and Matt and David and I go way back many, many years. But we've all been kind of floating around open source stuff and networking stuff for quite a long time. I very recently joined Juniper and thus got hooked up with NRE Labs. Um, but my last gig was actually with the Linux Foundation. And before that, I was working on Open Daylight at one of the Open Daylight member companies. So I have strong and passionate feelings about community building and community management for open source projects. And so that's what I'm helping Derek and team with for NRE Labs.
Nice. Okay, bringing up the chat window. Oh, was here for Matt. Thanks. Thanks. What is that? Fun Val KK. Well, thanks, Fun. Matt will be back. Matt will be back next week for sure.
Yeah.
And we have some fun things planned. Matt did a fun thing last week where he walked around Portland. I think it came out very low resolution, but it was looked like a cool thing to do. So we'll have other fun things like that. Hopefully we're gonna do it from a live event soon, like an event somewhere, not just our home offices. Um, so Matt and I, so I'm the developer advocate, and I'm slowly getting into that role, and it's still technical focused and working with people who want to contribute and make sure the tools work for them, that that kind of thing, that they get recognized for their contributions, and I
That's
send
really important.
it is a little bit, and we send out stickers and shirts and loot boxes and stuff like that to contributors, and then promote things online. Matt, of course, we all do those things actually, and then Matt is the core developer. So one thing Matt and I have never really done is actually start an actual community. We have lots of GitHub repositories with all kinds of broken, abandoned, or less than functional code in them, but that does not a community make. So
Very true.
yeah. So Lisa actually has some background in this, as a director at in marketing at the Linux Foundation. That was one of her prior roles. So aside from having code and the will and a GitHub account. Like, what are some of the things that we got to do, Lisa, to make this an actual community?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing is, I mean, get people excited about the project, obviously, but I think the thing that oftentimes engineers sort of overlook because they're really excited about their stuff is you have to make it easy and accessible for people to do stuff. So if you think about like when you're learning any new thing, right? You're watching somebody else do it, and you go, "Oh, that looks cool. How do I do that?" And there's some master at whatever it is, and you go, "Well, I'll never be that good." Um, oftentimes the simplest thing is to have somebody like, let's say you're, I don't know, I make cheese. So let's say I'm in the middle of like making a cheese and somebody comes along and says, well, I'd love to make cheese. And I'm like, great. Here, hold the colander for me while I scoop the curds into the colander. Like it's a very specific, practical thing that is useful and helpful. You're like in the mix, you're watching people do stuff. You're not in a place where you're going to mess stuff up, but you're getting to actually participate in a small piece. And oftentimes, just getting that specific, practical, tangible thing that a new person can do is the thing that kind of gets them over the hump. And they go, okay, what next? And then you go, okay, so now we're going to strain the curds. What does that mean? Why are we doing it? And I'll explain it as I'm going along. But they're standing there holding the colander for me while I'm straining the curds. And it's just it's kind of that giving out little piece parts over and over again, depending on, and as you get to know people, you get to know their interests, and one person might be really excited about planning events, and you're like, oh, we've got this event coming up, can you help with this? Because honestly, I suck at logistics, but this other person's really good at checklists. Can I put them in charge of like making sure we have whatever we need to have for in place for that event? And I'll go do the stuff. I just need them to like keep track of it all for me. Or it might be, it could be, any number of other things depending on what people are interested in. But it's a question of just carving off little pieces of things that match people's interests and skills, and getting them, sort of involved. And in the process of doing those little things, they get to know other people in the community, people who are maybe a little further along, who then are sort of other points of connection for them. And as people start to make friends and kind of find their way around a community, then they'll start to see other things that are going on and go, oh, I'd love to get involved with that. Oh, I'd love to do that. Hey, can I help you with that? And that's kind of sort of the how you get the ball rolling.
Okay, nice. Um, so for the people that are watching, is the video buffering for you guys? Because it keeps buffering for me on I have a monitor to monitor chat, and I see buffering. The buffering message keeps appearing. We'll. I don't know. Okay, no buffering or issues. It's just me. Good.
I think it's just you.
Yeah. Um. So we Lisa does have all kinds of practical advice, and she knows how to do things. One of the things I do now, I had a good talk with her not that long ago, and one of the things I do now, I know this is silly, but as engineers, sometimes we get wrapped up in what we're doing, like in our own headspace, right? And we're doing whatever it is we're doing in our headspace. We're banging out code or configuring stuff or setting things up, and you lose track of time. You don't know how much time you've actually spent doing whatever it is you're trying to do. This happens to me every single time I start doing anything technical. So, and I can't do that because if it's developer advocate, I have to like every so often, at least every hour, I have to stop and I have to check to see if there's messages or someone's trying to get a hold of me and that kind of thing. So I bought or actually excuse me, I was describing this problem to Missy and some of the things that Lisa and I had talked about, and she went out and got this thing. It's called it's a time timer. This is really cool. I know.
To me, I don't understand the difference between having that and having a clock on the wall. But if it works for you,
Yeah.
great.
Well, it's super. It was inexpensive. It's like $10, but you wind it, all the way around, and it's exactly 1 hour. And just after 1 hour, it'll beep. And this is really cool because um, it reminds me that there's other things to do in the universe besides ignore everyone and do technical stuff. And what's shocking is that I've turned this thing on, and it's not on now because we're streaming. But when I've turned this thing on and I've started doing stuff, thinking, okay, I have an hour, I'm gonna get this thing done, and then it seems like boom, it's beeping, and I'm like, there is no way. I've only been doing this for like 10 minutes, and no, it was like an hour. Um, so it's helpful. You should talk to
Yeah.
someone who knows how to operationalize and do things, and not just be an unwashed heathen engineer that pays no attention to anything else. Um,
Well, I mean, going back to the finding little things for people to do. It's the other piece of it. I think is helping people. Sort of see the how their little thing fits into the bigger whole, and for that, it really comes down to being really consistent and articulate about what it is we're actually trying to achieve, um, and why, and who it's for, um, and having a clearly articulated and documented plan for getting there. So I think we've been kind of doing lots of stuff within RE Labs. We haven't been as crisp about you know exactly what we're doing, either from a platform and technical standpoint. It really hasn't been an hour.
yeah,
um, or even just kind of from a sort of a strategic standpoint, what are we doing and why? And that's actually one of the things that Matt's out doing at Interop today, is explaining what we're doing and why. But just from a technical standpoint, right? We have a bunch of contributors already, who have been doing things, and it's sort of it's sort of classic early stage formation kinds of project stuff, where people are just doing stuff that seems like it's interesting and useful. And I think that's absolutely appropriate when a project is first starting out, because it's kind of that sort of swirling formation process is how the project finds its identity and what it wants to be about, and kind of the form it wants to take. But at a certain point, you kind of have to switch over and say, okay, we have a platform in place, we have some core lessons in place. um, you know what do we actually need to do to get to whatever we think the next level is? And so we've been kind of talking about what we think that next level is, and clearly, I mean, you work for Juniper, I work for Juniper, Matt works for Juniper, but none of us want this to be a Juniper project. We've open sourced the code, but now we really want to build a truly open community, that is not dependent on Juniper. Um, and so one of the ways that we do that is by being really crystal clear, about all of the different platforms that are being supported, by that people can play around with, in NRE labs, and kind of learn how to do automation on different types of platforms. So one of the things that we really want to do is start building lessons, for other platforms from other vendors. That's number one. Number two is kind of start knocking off kind of the top, automation tools, and building lessons around them. We have a lot of the fundamentals in place, but we kind of need to start focusing on tools that people might actually use, on a day-to-day basis in their automation practices, and start building more lessons around them. So those are kind of the two things that we need to really start doing, I think, as a community, and just starting to be prescriptive about how we're going to get from here to there. How are we going to build those lessons? Who's going to build them? How are we going to get them reviewed? By whom? And just kind of start putting the plans in place, and the work back schedules, and documenting the whole thing, and marching forward.
sure. So we have a question. Hold on one second. The question
Yeah.
is, maybe I missed it, but is there a plan to add an option for custom network topologies to practice automation on NRE Labs? And the answer to that question is there is a plan actually to do this. Um, that where you can actually specify what you want that topology to look like. It won't be now. This isn't at the moment meant to scale massively. We're talking about up like maybe 6 nodes or something like that. Usually when people are trying to figure something out, you don't need a huge full scale topology. Anyways, you build those for scale testing, right? You're usually doing that just to test functionality. Here's 3 nodes or 4 nodes or whatever it is to get your network configuration in place with configured in some way that's congruent to the environment that your automation will work in, and then you can build your automation against that smaller scale version of your production network. And so that feature is coming. That's we have I think next week or the week after we have a plan. If this is something that's really interesting you, we're going to go into great detail about how we're going to evolve NRE Labs over the next year. There's a lot of really interesting changes that are happening, and that's definitely one of them. So that's a good question. By the way, if you guys do have questions, just put them in the chat there, just like Fun has been putting them in there, and we'll answer them as we go along. Yeah, so that is a good idea, and beyond just the tools, right? We have to cover more tools. There's Nornir, and there's Netbox, and we do have a Netbox image already, but there's so many tools, Ansible, and there's actually quite a list of them, and so if you have the fundamentals and you have the tools, then what? And I think we'll see even after that, after Lisa helped us put a plan together, that we're gonna do that we're gonna have this push around combining the fundamentals with different tools to actually implement automated workflows, things like how to how to find a device in your network. Instead of just logging in devices and doing show commands until you find it, you can actually automate that using some combination of like Bash or Python or whatever, and then making API calls to these kind of tools to get that to do that for you in a much quicker and probably safer way, more thorough way. So and it's not just the this is crazy how much more effort there is into it. I mean, the core piece of it obviously is having this working platform and having something where people can go learn, but we have to support that with all kinds of like content. We have to write blogs and make videos. We do the stream. This was just ad hoc, the stream. We decided one day with like 30 minutes before we decided to do it that we were just going to do it with no plan. And
when you start out, it's great to just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. That said, I mean, you're talking about all the sort of the stuff we need to do, and I keep coming back to something that Dave Meyer used to say. And Dave Meyer was the founding chair of the Open Daylight Project, and he liked to say, this isn't an exact quote, I'm paraphrasing, but he liked to say that the code is the artifact of the process. And what he meant by that was really that how you get there is just as important as what you do. And I think that's probably even more true with NRE Labs than it was with a project that was focused on building a platform like Open Daylight, in the sense that the goal with NRE Labs is really to make it a place for a community for working network engineers to not only to learn, but to get to know each other, to share ideas, to share the things that they learn in the process of adopting automation and developing an automation practice. And so being very intentional about how we build our community, I think is extremely important for NRE Labs and for the overall health of the project. So we need to do stuff, but it's almost more important how we do it than what we do.
Yeah, it is, because without the how, the what goes nowhere, right?
Yeah.
We have to get people engaged. I mean, it's crazy because you think it's about the tech, and you're just going to make this awesome thing, and then people will find it, and then they'll just use it, right?
If
Or
you build it, they will come. Yeah.
yes, if you build it, they'll come, and then hey, it's here it is, the source code and everything. You can help fix bugs, and it's awesome. But it doesn't work like that,
Yeah.
as we have learned. um,
Well, I was having this rather interesting conversation on Twitter over the weekend with a guy who runs a living history group. He's based in the UK, and he focuses on Sogdians. Now, Sogdians were an Iranian people who were sort of merchants and traders back in the 6th and 7th centuries, kind of centered around what's now Uzbekistan, so Bukhara and Samarkand. And so he's off, showing, Sogdian merchant stuff and fabrics and arms and art and helmets and things like this at living history things in the UK, which are mostly focused on Vikings and Anglo-Saxons. And he was talking about how hard it is to get people sort of engaged on a consistent basis.
hmm.
um, and at various times he's talked about wanting to be sort of the counterpart to the sort of the mainstream in the West narrative about the Persians are always the bad guys against the Greeks or whoever happens to be inhabiting Anatolia. And at other times he's talked about different wanting to do it for different kinds of reasons. And it really came back to, well, are you trying to do events, or are you trying to build a community? What fundamentally is your goal? Because that really dictates how you approach things. And I think for us, for NRE Labs, we're I think all of us sort of kind of at the core of it are really, really clear that we really want this to be about the people and about the building skills for working helping working network engineers build skills. And so I think always having that being kind of the center of everything that we do is really important in terms of guiding the things that we do and what we do. So just being really intentional about that at every turn.
Yeah, that is important. I think building the community, and making sure you're communicating all the time with them, right? Through all of the various channels. We have a Discourse Forum now. It's community dot networkreliability.engineering. If you're not signed up on that forums yet, please go do so. There's already quite a few people on there interacting with us and reporting bugs and talking about the work they're doing. So please do that. But we have to pay attention, right? We have to make sure that we're engaged on all these channels and that we're encouraging people. In fact, oh wait, hold on. We have another comment. Let me express gratitude that for someone like me who isn't working on automation but wants to get into it, options like NRE Labs are a blessing. Can't thank you guys enough. Wow, sweet. That makes me feel like I don't have to do anything for the rest of the day now. Mission completed.
No, that's not the way you should feel, my friend.
No? Okay.
No, sorry.
I mean, that is.
I'm here to keep Toad honest, guys.
I can't do that. I'll get in trouble. I have so much stuff I have to do right now. But that is the actual. That's the core of what we're trying to do here. It's not automation is. We got to make it easy for people to get into it and to learn it like on a byte by byte basis, right? And then not turn it into this grand thing like studying for the JNCIE or the CCIE or something like that, which is this 6 months of intensive effort. You should be able to learn little things at a time that are useful and take that back into your everyday work and try to have it benefit you, right? And it shouldn't be that hard to get in. The barrier should not be that great to doing that.
Yeah.
So thank you for the comment.
Yes.
Oh, you know what? That reminds me. I'm gonna say this before I forget. Um, our our first public bounty was announced 2 Fridays ago, and I just want to make sure everyone on the stream here is aware of it. If you haven't seen it on the Discourse Forum, or if you haven't seen it on Twitter, basically, you know how our lessons are organized. We have different categories of lessons, and then each lesson is divided into stages, and those stages cover different sort of topics within the overall theme of the lesson. So we have like a little stage about YAML lists under the YAML lesson, and then we have another stage under the YAML lesson about YAML dictionaries. Well, anybody, well, at least the first few people that add 2 stages, right? It could be one lesson or to 2 different lessons, or you can create a whole new lesson and add 2 stages. Anyone that does this will, and you have to write a blog about it, a short one. It doesn't have to be a book. It can be short. We will actually send you an Enery Labs loot box, which we're currently preparing, so I can't show you what it is.
Loot.
Yeah,
It makes me feel like a pirate. Arr.
our loot box. Yeah. Well, loot boxes are they're, I guess, in video games now. Loot box. I don't understand video games now. I played a lot of video games when I was younger, but people get excited about these loot boxes because they like to customize their characters. They don't get like new abilities or like more powerful or anything. They get cosmetic items like hats and shirts, and sometimes it's funny and goofy, and sometimes it's more serious looking like ensembles, and they like to customize and get rare, like, anyways, they call them loot boxes. And this is bled over into real life, and you can actually subscribe to all different kinds of loot boxes now. Like you can like different, like we subscribe to this nerd box for a television show has been canceled now for almost a decade, called Firefly, and they're still sending out loot boxes, and they send you collectibles for Firefly in this loot box, and it's, when you open it, it's super fun every single time. Anyways, we're gonna do a physical loot box and mail it to whoever does these stages in our public bounty, and it'll include a sticker and a shirt if you want a shirt. So please contribute and possibly get a loot box with some cool stuff in it. Yeah, I can't wait to figure out what else is going to go. Actually, we need to talk about that. I don't know if I don't know if I talked to you about that. We had a brainstorm on what else to put in the loot box.
All right. Well, if you guys have ideas about what you would like to have in the loot box, keep them coming.
Yeah, actually, on our Discord or on Discourse, on the forums or in the chat server, if you have any ideas on what you'd like to see in the loot box, please share, and we'll definitely consider it. Okay, where were we? I tangented. We were talking about content, and then we talked about above and beyond just writing code. You have to build a community, and that's obviously content goes into that, right? The streams and the videos.
Absolutely.
And it's not just us creating those things. We have to come up with a way to encourage others and to make sure that, when they take the time to create that content, that we share it. And we actually had a couple of community members write some really great blogs, make some interesting contributions over the last couple of weeks, and we'll talk about that before the end of the podcast here in a few minutes. But yeah, stick around for that. There's some cool things that people did for us in the community, which looks anyways, stick around for that. So what are some of the other things? Like we have to be at events and stuff like that. And it's not always obvious to us what events we have to be at. There's a lot of different events. And Matt right now is at Interop, and there's like 1,000 different events every year. So we have to do some planning around that.
You can spend all your time and energy and money going to events. I'm not personally a big fan of events. I think that the return on investment is pretty low. I think you need to be really selective about which events you go to. If you're going to go to events, it's really a question of where you're going to meet the people who are most going to benefit from your stuff. I think interop is certainly a good choice. There are a couple of other ones, but oftentimes I think that meetups are almost a better way to really meet and engage folks than sort of big industry events. Mainly because if the people are there, they're not there because they're be told to go there by their companies or whatever, and they're schmoozing and they're doing the hallway track and blah blah blah. They're there because they really want to learn something. And that's the best place to kind of get hands on with somebody is if you go and you present and at the break somebody goes, well, that was really cool, can you tell me more about it? You can kind of sit there and just walk them through it right then and there. So I think that to the degree that we do events, meetups are great events, but events don't scale well, right? Especially if you have a small community, you can't have people going all over the world all the time. It just doesn't work. And so making it possible to work for people to engage both with the things, the tasks, the code, as well as with each other in a remote way is I think almost more important.
Oh, I'm getting messages here. Hold on. Just want to. That's funny.
And by the way, I'm just laughing that you have veggie lo mein on your board because I've never known you to be vegetable friendly at all.
Yeah, so I usually what happens is whenever my kids love Chinese food, and so whenever we decide to order it, and we just did the other day, I'm usually working when that decision is made, and then they'll come in here and start writing the order on the board because they all expect me to make the phone call and go get it. So that's, and then they tap my shoulder, hey, make sure when you're done you order this and go get it. Yeah. They've written, actually, one time I got up here and there was something highly inappropriate up there that my teenager wrote. And I didn't realize it until about halfway through. It wasn't this podcast, it was another one. And then somebody sent me a DM and was like, well, you might want to erase your whiteboard. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have a talk with them. um, So we have even above and beyond. So we have content and events, and we have just day-to-day thinking more strategically rather than tactically. We have these things like community guidelines, like governance docs,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing. Can you explain like a little bit what exactly is the purpose of a governance doc for an open source community?
Yeah, it's actually extremely important, and it's extremely important to do it well. It is. It basically describes the rights and responsibilities of all the members of the community, and members is actually something that has different meanings in different contexts. And so we should maybe talk about that right in itself a little bit. So when I was working for the Linux Foundation, of course, the foundation is funded by its members, and so a member is an organization that is contributing money as well as engineering resources, usually, and occasionally some other types of resources as well, to help fund the project as well as the foundation itself and the services that the foundation provides. In our case, right now the costs are not particularly high. Juniper is paying our salaries, but so it's that beyond that there aren't a lot of costs. The needs of the project are really much more centered around developing the lessons and building and fleshing out the platform and things like that. So when we talk about members and membership and the rights of members and contributors, we kind of need to be really crisp about what we're talking about who gets to be a member, who gets to be a committer, who gets to be a contributor, how those decisions are made, and just being really crystal clear about all of those things and being very transparent about all of those things. So that everybody knows coming in kind of how things work, and there aren't any surprises. And if you're coming in as a contributor, you want to know how to work with committers. What are the criteria for getting your stuff accepted? How can you become a contributor as you go along and kind of build a body of work and some stature and standing in the community? Like, what are the parameters for that? And so, almost every open source project out there originates in every major open source project has originated in some sort of organization or another that typically incubates the person doing the work and so forth and so on, and that's perfectly normal. What you want to see over time is that the originating organization lets go and is completely open to other people from other parts of the universe taking control and taking positions of leadership and so forth, and establishing a strong governance model is really key to that. And and then also, of course, living by the principles that are set out in the governance model. Some communities honestly do that better than others. Um, so there are obviously, in any system in the world, there are ways to game the system. So the question is, what does the governance model look like on paper, and then in practice, over 2-3 years, how does it actually play out in terms of how people wind up in leadership roles and things like that. So how open is the community on paper, and how open is it in reality? Those are both things that are worth looking at and evaluating as you're thinking about how you engage, either as a contributor to an open source project or as a user to an open source project. Also understanding that these are things that, especially when a project is first starting out, everything's in flux and everything's up for grabs. Right now, just because we're kind of starting to emerge from the formation stage, we don't actually have a governance doc in place. And what I've proposed is that we not do that until we have a couple of other sort of lead organizations actively participating and involved. Because even with all the best intentions in the world, if we, you, Matt, and I write the governance doc ourselves, it may not consider the perspectives and needs of other organizations, simply because we don't know about them. We don't know what they might want or need. And so until we've had those conversations with a few different organizations about what that might look like, I think it makes sense to kind of maybe start drafting one, but not codify it until we have 2 or 3 other organizations actively participating and kind of putting their stamp of approval on it.
Okay. That makes sense. We have we do have a draft thing called the Code of Practice, which I don't think is, strictly speaking, a governance doc.
It's not a governance doc. It's more a statement of scope and of intent. And that's actually, it's not really obvious where it is. It's actually under the antidote portion of our GitHub site, but it is there. It's a good. I think it's a reasonably good statement of intent and mission and scope and things like that. It's of course still sort of open for other people to comment on, and that can always be an evolving document too. It's not set in stone. But again, it's not something that we want to change lightly either. We want to be intentional about it, especially for something as foundational as a code of practice, because again, the artifacts are the outcome of the process. And so we want to be very thoughtful about when we put together a code of practice, when we put together a governance doc, we want to be very clear that we're doing it in the right way for the right reasons, and that we are also crystal clear with everybody in the community, and that everybody feels like they've had an opportunity to contribute if they want, to ensure that that it's going to meet the needs of the broadest number of people in the community possible.
Yep. So if you guys want to check out the what the draft, is just a draft. It's a work in progress, and of course any feedback would be great if you have any feedback. The work in progress code of practice is on GitHub now under the, let me pull it up, make sure the antidote directory, ANTIDOTE, just antidote. Um, and in particular, let me pull it up. Antidote docs attribute. No. Oh, when you go to that repository, just click on pull requests, and then there is a single open pull request there now called the Code of Practice, and you can read it, and if you have any feedback, you can leave it on GitHub, or you can leave it on our forums, or any on Discord, whatever is easiest for you, and we'll it's a discussion, so please discuss. I should that's I'm gonna say that a lot. It's a discussion, so please discuss. I like that.
All right.
It's polite. So, okay. We've been on now for a little while, and I just like to highlight a couple things. If you go into our Discord or Discourse site, there is a community member, Brian Linklater. Uh, um, in fact, that's the URL too, Brian Linklater, I believe, .com. He has written. It is Brian Brian Linkletter, Linkletter. So it's spelled exactly as it sounds. He has written a really great blog on how to set up the development environment for Enery Labs to contribute lessons. So please go check that out. He actually also walks through how to get it set up with KVM if you're not a VirtualBox fan, which is the default setup for a development environment. It's trivial to change that, and if that works better for you, then definitely, his blog walks you through that process. Also, there's an ongoing discussion. One Obergix, Obergix, one of our community members, did some hackery and managed to get VNC to work. And if you're familiar with our lesson layout, we have the lesson text on the left side. It would be my left side. I don't know if left or right. Anyways, on the right side, there's a bunch of tabs, and normally it's all SSH sessions, and you can tab through those to, the network nodes or the like a Linux box or whatever. But he's managed to get it so that you can actually embed a VNC session, so you get a desktop from a container inside of those tabs. Of course, it's not committed yet. It's not a feature that he just he just did some hackery to see if it would work. There's some other significant changes that we have to make in order to support that, but that is coming now. It's now officially on the roadmap, and hopefully we'll have that in the next couple of months. That would be a great addition to our it's another capability for people building lessons where it makes sense. Some tools that people use are in fact desktop tools. They're not command line tools. So we need to have that. So so thank you Obergix for that, and thank you Brian Linkletter for that blog write up. I think we'll just end it here. And
All right.
please come back next Monday. I think Matt will be back, and we have even more things to discuss.
We can hear what you thought of Interrupt this year.
Yeah, we should go over that because that is kind of the network automation event. That's for whatever reason, everyone who's really into network automation blogs about it a lot, works for companies, that do network automation, etc. Or orgs or whatever. For some reason, Interop is now the de facto home of where they all congregate every year. And Matt went this year to represent our community and to talk to people. And we should get it. It'd be good to hear a status on him, what cool things he saw and stuff like that. That's something we want to cover more actually on the stream. Is not just Enery Labs, but taking some time out to look at some of the cool projects that are out there, things like Nornir and Netbox and stuff like that, because there's just so much work going on. it's it's worth talking about, right? I mean, we're seeing something really awesome happening in the network engineering space. People are starting to embrace being able to say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to make the tool that makes sense for network engineers, and that whatever it does, that tool that does a thing that the network engineers need, they put it on GitHub and they start building a community around it. And there's some cool things that people have done. So we should be sharing that, especially things that are going to be there's going to be lessons about inside of Enery
Yeah.
Labs.
Yep.
So
And maybe if we talk, if you guys tell people more about what's going on out there, they'll go poke around and go, "Ooh, we need an Area Labs lesson," and they'll go write it. That'd be awesome.
yeah, and then they'll get a loot box. Um, so so we're gonna sign off. I'll give the standard goodbye. Lisa, do you have anything you want to say?
No, I look forward to connecting with the community members more going forward.
Sweet. Okay. Well, you can follow Lisa on Twitter. She is real Lisa C.
Real Lisa C. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, just letter C, right? So real Lisa
Yeah.
letter C.
Yep.
You can follow me on Twitter. I'm CloudToad, and of course follow NRE Labs at NRE Labs. And please take the time to, again, join our Discourse forum, join our Discord chat server, and please follow us on Twitch, which you're watching right now. So, and on YouTube, because that's where we publish our recorded videos.